Yeah, so I run a podcast called Suicide Sucks. And the reason that I run that podcast is because I want people to be able to say the word suicide without feeling like it's a dirty word. So even on social media platforms nowadays, there's often not the option to have the hashtag of suicide, because it's like, not something people want to talk about. So I'd like to change that. And the reason I'd like to change that is because in 1996, my brother James took his own life. And even though that was 28 years ago, almost 28 years ago, I don't really feel like much has changed in the way that we talk about suicide. The day that it happened was obviously, as it is for anyone, the worst day of my life, and I can remember it as though it was yesterday. I don't think I've ever sobbed so much in the whole of my life. I mean, it was ridiculous really, but just that overwhelming emotion I've never experienced since. And the way that grief has an effect on you, I can't believe that it's literally 28 years and I only just feel like I've actually worked through all the different stages that there are. Hopefully, never say never, but I feel like I have finally got there. For me, the journey was very sporadic and bitty, and there were times when I thought I'd got over the death of my brother, and then, wham, bam, I realised I hadn't. In the very beginning, there was definitely denial that went on. He was actually in New York when it happened, so it was quite distant. But I could invent all sorts of different things to try and con myself into thinking that it hadn't really happened. So denial was definitely a big one for me. There was obviously also the depression element of it. When I got to the age that he was when he took his own life, he was 27 when he did it. And when I got to the age of 27, I kind of went off the rails a bit, lost the plot. And I'm convinced that that was just because I couldn't process that I was the same age as him. And, that was a really difficult time. And then fast forward from that about another 16 years in 2017, and I did my back in. I had 2 slip discs and sciatica, and I couldn't move for literally 8 months, and I was booked in for an operation and everything. And I now know that that was basically my anger manifesting itself physically in my body. I'm a big believer in these things. And it wasn't until I had some sessions actually with my other brother, Simon, who was training to be a kinesiologist at the time, that we worked together through it and had the most amazing experience where I literally was able to understand the anger and let it go. He did this amazing meditation with me, and I had to, he talked me through it, but it was just mind-blowing really. And not long after that, I started to improve with my back, and I cancelled the operation that I'd got booked in and haven't had a problem since. So I am a big believer that if anybody's suffering any physical pain, that there may well be something emotional that needs looking into. Who knows? But it definitely worked for me. And because I feel like I've come through those stages of grief, touch wood, that I'm now able to do something that could help. So my passion really is trying to raise money for Papyrus, which is a UK charity that is to help prevent suicide in young people. It's the biggest killer in people under the age of 35, which I mean, that alone is just ridiculous that that is the case. And over 200 teens lose their lives to suicide every year. And there are 5 young people every day that take their own lives. I mean, it's just warrants talking about it. And that, as I say, is the main reason why I am so passionate about it. And the way that I raised money for Papyrus was, I walk the dog, I like walking, but I'm not going to go out and do, a 300-mile walk. So I used what are my strengths, and I went about creating a 30-minute documentary called Suicide Sucks. And what I did was I put a call out in my local community asking for people to come forward and to be part of my documentary. And I mean, I couldn't believe how many people came forward, to the extent that I had to say to some people, oh look, I'm really sorry, but if I make another one, then perhaps I can have a chat. It was so clear that people did want to talk about it. It's just that they had no way of doing it. So once I'd done the documentary, I then thought, right, I want to do more. So I've set up a podcast called Suicide Sucks. And the idea with the podcast is that guests come on and they talk openly and honestly about their dark days. And basically, don't hold back. And my objective with that is that there could be just one person listening who resonates with that story they're listening to. So, for example, Paul there were lots of issues, there always are with suicide, but one of the top ones for him that pushed him to actually having 3 attempts on his life was alcohol. So if there was one person sat listening to Paul talk about his relationship with alcohol, and it resonates with them, but they're listening to this person who's now in his late 60s, who has got through that and has, lived to tell the tale, then obviously that may well give that listener the hope to carry on and to reach out. And I truly believe that if my brother had had something like that, then maybe his journey would have been different. I don't know, but it can only help. And I just want the word suicide to not be treated in such a disdainful, dirty way. People aren't honest. I bet you most people have suicidal thoughts or have had a suicidal thought at some point in their life, and we just don't talk about it. We avoid it. And if there's one thing that I would say to anybody who's concerned about anyone, obviously check out, there's so much out there now, Papyrus, Calm, Andy's Man Club, there's Young Minds, that's another brilliant one. But if you've got any concerns about anybody, ask them. Actually use the language, say to them, are you having suicidal thoughts? Because that immediately breaks down the barrier, and that person will be thinking, oh, they're prepared to talk about suicide. They've said the word, I don't have to. And I'm convinced that that could be a really useful tool if we didn't all shy away from it. So thank you so much for listening. If you would watch my podcast, that would be fantastic. Not watch my podcast, listen to my podcast. It's on Spotify. It's called Suicide Sucks. There's also my video documentary, which is on YouTube. It's called Suicide Sucks. Hopefully there's a link to that. Thank you very much.